hope those old ones don't mind us knocking on our door in the middle of a war. Nah, I'll be fine. If they kill us, it won't be much different from staying here waiting. And so, without more words, she prepared to head north, for the echo of an ancient blood still beating in the earth's womb. The reflection of the gray sky, still speckled by the last remnants of dust, projected at her eyes, which followed the horizon line with a mix of skepticism and resignation. Emma sighed, barely audible, and turned toward us. I don't like it. She crossed her arms. Which part exactly? Emma let out an ironic laugh. The part where we are looking for a clan that will probably want to hang us from trees. Or the part where we bet everything on a Celtic legend with Zeko breathes down our necks. You don't have to come if you don't want to. Emma stared at me harshly for a few seconds, then sighed again and leaned against the window frame. It's not that I'm coming. If anyone can find Eric, it's you. And someone has to make sure you don't end up with your head split in two before you get there. I'm just saying, don't get too excited thinking that old lineage is gonna fix your life. But people live bound by codes that make even a circle look flexible. Noted. Karia nodded, without arguing. I know, but if we want a real chance to level this war, we have to try. Eric might not be friends, but at least they aren't dealing before the circle. Emma looked down, thoughtful. And if they are, she said softly, then we're heading straight into another monster's mouth. There was a brief silence. Then Emma stepped away from the window, walked to the table and picked up one of the pistols she had been checking. She turned it over in her hands with a familiarity. Anyway, I wanted to see with my own eyes for a long time if those legends were true. She gave me a look that wasn't distrust, but respect. A tense respect full of warning, but respect nonetheless. If you go, I go. But don't get confused. I don't believe in redemption. If the world has salvation, it won't come from a forgotten lineage. It'll come from us. From fury, from the fight, nothing else. Karia smiled. Perfect, so be it. She gave me a look that wasn't distrust, but respect. A tense respect full of warnings, but okay, we went through that? Okay. Okay. Alright. Emma put the gun back in the table, adjusted her clothes, and walked to the door. Then hurry up. If we're gonna walk toward the past, better be ready. Night had fully fallen by the time we left the building. The city, though still alive at certain corners, felt strangely distant. The car lights, distant voices, everything seemed contained in a remote bubble, as if ordinary world had been left behind the moment we decided to follow the Eric's trail. I walked at the front with a firm step, the backpack on my shoulder and my coat buttoned to the neck. The courier followed a few steps behind, and was behind both of us, watching every shadow as if it could hide a threat. The nearest subway station wasn't far. We went down an entrance, lit by a flickering sign, ascended the creaky metal stairs under our feet. The echo of our steps resonated through the tunnels, empty at this hour of the night. There's no one here. Perfect. The emptier, the fewer witnesses if something goes wrong. Karia moved ahead, searching on the screen of the old digital map for the line that feels closest to the city's northern limit. We'll take the gray line to the last station. From there, there's a freight train that crosses old provinces. We used to get closer, then the rest we'll do on foot, or however we can. And how many kilometers is that? Depends. She didn't look at me as she spoke. The artifact in my skin burns more as we get closer, but if I think it is true, we'll cross territories humans haven't gone to in decades. Emma looked at the tracks, shrouded in darkness. Perfect. Back to the Forgotten World. When the train arrived, it screeched metal and dim lights. We boarded without speaking. The cars were nearly empty. Only one man slept in the seat at the back, covered with an old blanket, and an old woman who looked at us suspiciously before changing seats. Yeah, I'll do the same shit. We both took seats in a secluded corner where the buzzing lights weren't so strong. Have you ever traveled this far? I looked out the window as the train started moving. I have, but a long time ago. Those were different times. I haven't. Emma replied, resting her head against the glass. Our family didn't leave the city much. You know, keep a low profile. The car shook, passing through a deep tunnel. The lights flickered once. Do you think the Eric will be willing to listen to us? Karia hesitated before answering. If they still hold on to what they were, yes. But don't go with human expectations. They're old, older than you can imagine. Their view of the world isn't ours, and if they let us talk, it'll be because they see something useful in us. Emma turned her head toward me. Keep your mouth shut, at least until we know if they want to listen or eat you. Noted. The warning had a dry tone, but also a rough camarade. Oh no. Due to the spiral differences, we were beginning to function as one body. The train continued on, taking us farther from the city, close to the ancient shadows sleeping underground. Close to the judgment of the past. And the train wound through rusty tunnels. Flickering lights blinked as if the car was breathing heavily. An uncomfortable silence took over for a few minutes until the courier broke it with a low, thoughtful voice. If they're there, if Eric still exists, they look like they came from another world. You mean older? Or deformed or something? No. Eric shook her head slowly. Even in appearance, they're different, very different. They existed before the world globalized, where races mixed, where language, fashion, and customs erased the marks of the past. Okay. They were pure Celts, inhabitants of these lands when time was still counted by suns and harvests. If they survived, didn't cross paths with other clans, corrupted by modern decay, and seeing them, they would be looking directly into the past. It would be like look directly into the past, okay. How different can they be? Karia fell into her seat, crossing one leg over the other. Tall, thin, with pale, almost translucent skin, red hair like fire or so blonde, it looks like silver. Pale eyes, somewhat of the divine iris, not for aesthetics but lineage. They're the echo of an era where blood still told stories, where names were packs, and faces were the sign of the tribe you belonged to. And they never left their land? Eric didn't, that's what the writings say. They hid in the ruins when the world began to change. They never participated in modern vampire wars, nor in the rise of the Bloody Circle. They closed in on themselves, like a sect or a time capsule. Some believe they even became hostile to outsiders. So we're not just going to see something strange. We're stepping into a territory that probably has hated us since we crossed the first stone. Exactly. That's also why they might help us. If they kept their codes, if they still abide by old Celtic honor, they might see value in someone fighting for their blood. Someone who lost everything and refused to give up. Or they might rip out our hearts as a warning. Huh? Could be, but the risk is worth it. Because if they're alive, they keep some of their power, and they could be the only thing that tips the balance. The train slow, entering a curved zone. Outside, cities faded, giving way to a wilder, rawer darkness. And with it, the shadows of a past that refused to die approached. Emma leaned back, against the seat back, arms crossed in a barely contained smile. The train creaked as it left behind another ghost station, but she seemed more amused by the conversation than any possible threat in the tunnel. You're a geek, Lucaria, always have been, since we were kids, ever since. Lucaria slowly turned her head, raising the eyebrow with that expression somewhere between resigned and amused. Again with that? Since kids? Since when have you two... Well, how long have y'all known each other, really? Since we were newborns, almost 200 years ago. The silence that followed was thick. I blinked once and again, was learning what I'd just heard. 200? Uh-huh. Emma nodded, smiling. Didn't see that coming, did you? Kari is a bit older than me, to be fair, but our families live in the same district. So before she learned to fight, and she pushed me into the mud more times than I like to admit. And you tore out one of my fangs once. Mikaria turned, slightly with a restrained smile. There were 10, you've always been the saint. You were bothering me, and you deserved it. Emma stuck out her tongue like a teenager. Their voice carried a centuries-old weight. You grew up together, as humans? Not exactly. You were born already into vampire families, yes. You were small, very young. We grew up in a more traditional environment, if you call it that. The enclave where certain old rules were still respected. We ate, played, and studied, and fought every other day. Emma looked down, nostalgic, for a moment. Those were good times, hard but pure, where our circle started swallowing everything like a disease. Before we had to pick a side. Kara added quietly. You weren't part of anything important then, just girls with too many questions. I never imagined vampires could have childhoods or lifelong friendships. Kara lowered her gaze, voice becoming soft. Something the circle hates most, you know, memory. Memory is resistance. If you remember who you were, it's entirely become what they want. Those were good times. Hard but pure. For the circle started swallowing everything like a disease. And allowed a snort. And Nikaria, this geek, she pointed with her thumb. This is the queen of memories. She has books, diaries, maps, poems, even toys from when we were little. Not true. Nikaria murmured, though a faint smile betrayed her. It is true. This crusade didn't start yesterday. Maybe for you, but Nikaria has been preparing all this for over a century, waiting for the moment. They looked at me both. For the first time I felt something unnamed. Something like respect, or maybe simply the understanding that I was in the middle of something much older and much more personal than I imagined. Karen let out a brief, nasal laugh. She was already expecting the reaction and adjusted her posture in the seat. The dim light of the car reflected in her eyes, giving her a calmer and mystical air. It was normal in old families at least. Many times women grew up knowing that someday they would share the same consort. What do you mean by sharing? I frowned, looking at her as if she hadn't heard right. Yes, exactly that. Emma interrupted me with an ironic smile. Inseparable friends? Literally. Not so strange if you look at it from a lineage perspective. In some vampire casts, especially the oldest clans, bonds weren't just emotional, they were political, strategic. The vampire had to perpetuate their legacy or protect their bloodline. One partner wasn't enough. They formed small family units with 2 or 3 women who already knew each other, who were compatible with each other and with him. That seemed completely absurd, that they were choosing furniture instead of people. From your human logic, maybe, Emma said without offense. But you're not understanding. It wasn't a possession, it was a pact. It's in theory. No one forced the girls if they didn't want to. Most accepted it. The idea was competition, but companionship. Sometimes those relationships among women were stronger than with the consort himself. Okay. There were friendships that lasted centuries. In our case, for example, we grew up knowing we probably would never be apart. But if one day we had to choose someone, we'd do it together, but not at all. And don't you think that's unhealthy? I mean, where does love fit and all that? Karia looked at me silently for a few seconds, never losing her smile. Love comes or doesn't come. It's not always like the movies told you. Sometimes it's born from shared commitment. At a time it never appears. But between us, there was always something stronger than that. It's not about romantic love. It's about loyalty, about having seen the worst in the other and staying by their side anyway. Okay. I fell silent, brow slightly furrowed. There was something about the idea that clashed with everything I knew, but also something that, although I couldn't fully admit it, sparked some curiosity. Nikaria noticed. I'm not asking you to understand. Just to know that these kinds of things are more common among ours than you think. And that also makes the pain heavier when they take everything away. There was a pause. The train continued its course, roaring beneath the human world, just taking us straight into the past. And among those ancient shadows, the rules were different. and across her arms, leaning forward with a mischievous smile on her lips. I glanced at her sideways, noticing she was about to say something she shouldn't, or at least something she knew would bother the Karya. She had looked sideways at her friend, and Karya let out a heavy sigh. She already knew what was coming. I don't hold back, you know that. Ava replied naturally, looking directly at me. You were always three, Karya, me, and Harvia. The name hung in the air like an echo, charged with more than just nostalgia. Karya averted her gaze to the window, pressing her lips. Again with this? She said in a low, somewhat hardened voice. Again, yes. I affirmed, maintaining her composure. I don't know why you pretend it doesn't matter. We all know it does. And you have the right to know. Harvia wasn't just part of the group. She was close to Karya. Very close. Close how? I raised an eyebrow. That makes you write ridiculous poems at midnight. Keep letters under lock and key. That kind. Karya slowly turned her head, glaring at her. Are you done? I'm reporting, not judging. I looked at her now, more interested than annoyed. The shadow of pain on her face, barely visible but undeniable. Who was Harvia? I asked more seriously. Karya took a moment before answering. Her fingers played briefly with the edge of her coat before she spoke. She was the best of us. Braver than me, stronger than Emma, but that's saying something. She had a sharp mind and even sharper tongue. She was always one step ahead and always knew what was coming. And that's why she left first. Emma looked down, this time without irony. She didn't leave alone. Karya nodded slowly. Circle found her. I don't know how, but they tempted her. They convinced her she could rise, that she could change things from within, and I realized that she was no longer the same. Her gaze had changed. Her voice, her laughter. You mean her, your enemy? I said softly. No, she chose to be. I just let her go because I couldn't stop her. There was a thick silence between the three of us. The carriage seemed to creak in a sign of respect. Harvia isn't dead. But if we see her again, it won't be a friendly reunion. We had to learn that too. That not all betrayals come with blood. Some come with promises. I lowered my gaze. For the first time I understood that the fight we were undertaking wasn't just against the circle, but also against the ghosts of the past. Emma clicked her tongue and rested her elbows on her knees, intertwining her fingers with a thoughtful expression. Her voice dropped slightly, not in the sadness but in recognition of the inevitable. Harvia was from an aristocratic family, just like the Karya. But unlike her, Harvia always wanted more status, more power, more control. What she had was never enough. She was ambitious, and not in a bad way at first. She simply didn't know how to stop. Karya didn't look at her. Her gaze was fixed on the ground, steady, unblinking. She didn't do it just for ambition. She did it for her family too. Took a promise not to touch them if she cooperated. She knew they were vulnerable. She knew it would only take one wrong word for them all to disappear. So she did what she thought was necessary. And you understood her? I understood her, yes. It doesn't mean I justify it. Javier crossed the line. She thought she could stay clean, walking through the mud, but no one can. Not with them. Emma glanced at her sideways, sighing quietly. You forgive her, but I don't. If she didn't just accept it, she became one of them. She never became the same. Arya said, finally looking up. And I couldn't do anything, just watch her drift further and further away. She stopped looking back. There was a tense moment of silence, a dull echo that not even the screeching of the train could fix. And if we find her again, what will you do? The question broke the stillness, the deep voice. I wouldn't hesitate. Emma didn't even blink. I will look her in the eyes, just to see if there's still something of her left inside. Just to be sure I wasn't wrong to let her go. Emma looked away, annoyed, but she didn't argue, not this time. The train kept moving, and on the ground, darkness in the air, the name Harvia floated like an unresolved shadow, now standing dead, and a wound that sooner or later would bleed again. And let out a long sigh, exasperated as if she had been holding that poison for decades. You know what? I'm fed up. She locked eyes with Dikaria, her gaze slightly narrowed. Harriet wasn't a victim. She wasn't just a scared girl who sold her soul to save her family. No. Harriet is a blood sorceress, one of the most powerful I've seen in my damn life. Spoiled child of Azilith, her prodigy, her shadow. I probably mispronounced that, but oh well. Dikaria pressed her lips together. Her normally serene expression immediately turned tense. Emma, enough. Enough, really? Emma laughed, without joy. You still talk about her like she was the same girl who wrote silly poems and stole flowers from her mother's gardens. But that Harvia died a long time ago. Harvia now would hunt us without blinking if Azilith ordered it. Azilith? You don't know that. Dikaria murmured, but her voice no longer sounded confident. Of course I do. Emma snapped, raising her voice. You know it too, but you don't want to admit it. It's hard to let go. You don't want to accept that she used you. That when the time came to choose, she didn't choose you, nor me. She left. She left with her. She left us like two stray dogs. The silence that followed was thick, almost painful. Dikaria stood rigidly, looking at the ground as if she could find words that they were no longer to say. Okay. I watched the scene without intervening, understanding that what was unfolding between the two was an old storm, pain that had never healed. Emma, still breathing heavily, lowered her tone a bit. You don't have to keep loving her, Daka. She doesn't deserve it, not after all this. Not after what she did to us. Kara looked up, her eyes shone not with tears, with tame fury, with sadness that, though old, was still alive like a badly healed wound. I don't love her, Emma. I remember her. Emma looked away, murmuring quietly. Same thing. The train roared in the darkness as it moved forward, as if the underground world had refused to calm down. And amid the metallic echo, the unspoken words between them hung heavy, flowing like a duel that hadn't yet been fought in the end. We looked at each other, just as I asked the question. Her vampire spawn. For the first time in several minutes, the tension dissolved between them. Thank God. Emma laughed first, bringing a hand to her face as if she couldn't believe I had really asked that. Someone has asked. Her smiled too, more contained with a playful spark in her eyes. We're not born like you. We don't come out of the womb of a human or vampire woman. That's what you're thinking. Then I frowned, intrigued. We're conceived, not born. The pure vampire wants to create offspring. They don't impregnate anyone. They use a ritual, an ancient one, that mixes their blood with a fragment of a stolen soul. It's done in special chambers, often filled with ruins, in castles you couldn't see even in your worst nightmares. It's a cold process, precise and personal sometimes, but necessary. What comes from that is pure blood, or at least close enough to be part of a lineage. And the mothers in that kind of relationship? She made air quotes. Tend to be more social figures, educators, clinic companions. Not the ones who give life, but because in reality no one gives life the way you understand it. And you? Do you have any idea who created you? I asked. I'm not quite sure how to put it. Only who raised us, who shaped us into what we are. Noble families assign tutors, guardians, symbolic mothers. There's no biological bond. We're the product of political decisions, blood pacts. That's why many of ours feel so empty. Because we weren't born of love. We were born of strategy. So no, dear. There's no mom rocking us in the cradle. There are books, training, and sometimes knives. Sean's returned for a moment. Dense, but different from before. Not tense, but reflective. The car looked at me with a calmer expression. But my mothers were good to me. It's good. Very good, actually. Emma looked at her sideways, without interruption. Oh, shoot, man. He told me stories, taught me to read patiently, sang to me even when they had no voice to do so. I watched her silently for a moment. At least the woman hardened by her loss and fury looked different, more human. In our house, Emma interjected with a grimace that seemed to hold both pride and nostalgia. We tried to live differently. You were a small family, not the most influential, but one of the closest. The leaders of our line were slaves to ritual or power. They were true caretakers. Women with names, with laughter, with soft hands and firm words. And that's why it hurt me so much to lose everything. Because what was taken from us wasn't a title or a house, it was a childhood. A life that, for many of us, was impossible to imagine. Emma nodded, crossing her arms, though without the sarcasm from before. Not all vampires grow up among shadows and screams. Some like us have something like love. Maybe that's why we fight differently. Because we weren't born hating, but we learned what it is to lose everything. The train kept moving. For the first time in a long while, the silence that followed was kind, warm, a breath among so many wounds. Her settled into her seat, crossing one leg over the other, as her gaze got lost for a moment in the reflections of the subway tunnel. Her voice came out serene, almost like someone remembering a warm corner of childhood. I know it might sound strange to you, but when I was a child, I saw more love between my mothers than between my father and either of them. Much more. We were mothers. Were your mothers a couple? I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Yes. Kara nodded with a soft smile, filled with an old affection. Actually, that's pretty common in our world. Among vampires, female bonds tend to be the longest lasting, strongest, and often the most sincere. Lesbianism is almost everyday bred among us. And it's not a trend or rebellion, like some humans think. Yay! Those who understand something many other races forget. Intimacy, support, and loyalty between women can be deeper than any bond marked by tradition or power. Relationships between male and female vampires tend to be stained by hierarchy and by control. Even when there is affection, true equality is rare. Among us, there's another kind of understanding. We grow up together, protect each other, understand each other in the rawest parts of what we are. And when one chooses to share eternity with another, Emma said with a crooked smile, that's what really matters. That weighs. I looked at them, processing that vision with a mix of surprise and respect. It was another reflection of a world I was just beginning to understand. And your father? What role did he have in all that? Vicaria shook her head with a distant gesture. Present, yes, but distant, cold. He did what he had to as political figure, as part of the lineage. But he never stayed up reading me stories, never got his hands dirty cooking with me. That place was theirs. They were my family. And across her arms, a gleam of pride in her gaze. And that's why we are the way we are. Because before blood, we had affection. Before duty, we had a home. Emma shrugged, looking at me with a calmer expression, though charged with a maturity that seemed to come not from a single life experience, but from many layered lives. My father was different. He was a good man, a good father, even. He cared about me, looked after me, but he never loved all his wives. Protagonist raised an eyebrow, but Emma kept going, as if she told this past of her story many times, or at least repeated it to herself on more than one occasion. Not because he was cruel, nor because he despised any of them, simply he couldn't. Men in our society, the vampiric one, change over time. They become increasingly dissatisfied. Everything seems too little. What they desire today, they despise tomorrow. Appreciating real affection becomes something vague, even annoying to them. Nikara nodded softly, without interrupting. There comes a point when they stop desiring women, not because they become asexual or wild, because there is no longer any pleasure that satisfies them, no companionship that moves them. They isolate themselves, fill themselves with power, relics, knowledge. Genuine affection means nothing to them anymore. They see it as minor distraction. And your father was like that? Emma thought for a moment before answering. My father was good to me, but with his wives, no. He ignored many of them. Others he simply let go. He always said love wasn't necessary to raise a daughter. Discipline, security, and legacy were enough. But I saw it. I saw him staring at the fire with a lost gaze, as if he no longer knew what he wanted, as if he had completely forgotten. It's one of those prices of immortality. The soul wears out in ways the body doesn't show. Emma nodded gravely, and for a moment, the silence between them took shape, a bitter truth, one they both know very well. And you? How is it that you're still whole? How is it that your soul isn't route like everyone else's? You slowly turned her face toward him, her eyes serious, while the sarcastic gleamed other times. Karia looked at him, too, softer, as if her answer couldn't be taken lightly. Because we don't take human blood. We never did. Only once. We turned 15. Okay. The ceremony, mandatory. Additional. For giving human blood to taste is a test of maturity. In our house, only a drop enough to awaken certain abilities is sealed vampiric heritage. Okay. After that, we made a promise. The two of us to never do it again. Never cross that line. Ever. And that is enough? Yes, human blood is more than food. It's a bond. It forms, corrupts, brings the soul closer to something that's no longer human, but isn't anything else yet either. It tears pieces out of you, makes you hollow. We didn't want that. We wanted to keep the blood we knew made us feel real. We feel, remember, dream. That's why it's so hard for us to understand the others, because most have already crossed that point of no return. We no longer care about love, trueness, or loss. Only power, blood, and emptiness. He lowered his gaze for a moment. Revelation that unsettled him. In his mind, all vampires were disguised beasts. But in front of him were two unnatural creatures, confessed to having fought for their souls with nails and teeth. So, are you human? Not in body, but yes, in spirit. We keep trying. Emma frowned, as if stirring up a memory buried for years, but at least still with a mixture of resignation and bitterness. Actually, it was Harveya who started all that. She was who discovered that human blood really did it to us. Or really did to us. She discovered the effects. Yes, Harveya was brilliant, even when young. One of those minds that don't accept tradition without first opening it up, analyzing it, breaking it down. When we turned 15, we were made to drink that drop. She was the first to question everything. That's good. She didn't like how she felt afterward. Said it was as if something inside her had gone out, just from a drop. Started watching the adults, studying how they changed with the years. So they became colder, more distant, emptier. And she connected it all. The continuous consumption of human blood, the deterioration of the soul, emotional isolation, the loss of empathy. So she was the one who started the absentence pact? Yes, it was her idea. She convinced us. She said that if we didn't want to end up like the others, we had to stay clean. That the only way to keep being ourselves was to avoid that kind of blood, no matter the cost. Okay. Ironically, you're right. Same who taught us to preserve the soul and themselves into the bloody circle. For power, for fear, for whatever. She made the pact, crossed the line, and now she's someone else. Why? If she knew all that. Sophia wasn't just smart, she was also ambitious. And Circle knew how to use that. They gave her the chance to save her family, checked her name, to reach a level of mentor she would never touch without betraying everything she believed in. And she betrayed everything. Us too. The sounds became uncomfortable, heavy. I could barely say anything. I only thought about that young woman who had planted the seed of salvation and had been the first to trample it. The train stopped with a long old whistle. Doors opened with a soft creak and we stepped onto the platform of a station covered in moss and lichens, almost consumed by time. Let's save right here. Let's see, what's September? Okay, so we're staying somewhat on track. I'm trying to make sure I at least push out 2 videos of this one. This is like gonna be like a longer playthrough if I continue this, because it's a lot more verbiage, a lot more dialogue than what I initially anticipated. But yeah, I might honestly just like take my time and record like a longer video, push out more part, but at the same time it's so much, it's might be worth it just to put out shorter parts so that way it's more easily digestible. I'm still trying to figure that out, but this is Vaniar. I forget which part this is, but yeah, it's getting more in depth. We're actually going to hopefully kind of Iraq very soon. I feel it's going to take a bit more, but we'll see. We're getting off the subway. So with that being said, I'll end it here, and hopefully y'all enjoyed, and I'll catch y'all next.